Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you didn't know, I've been on break for the past 3 weeks for my AP tests, and it was a very lovely break, and I think I did very well on my AP tests. But now I think I'm ready to get back to making videos, and as usual, I will be posting a new video in 2 weeks. But since I have no new content for you today, I'm going to be talking a bit about the geography of my world so that you have a bit more context about where my videos are taking place. So I've decided to change the name of this central continent here to Safan because it was very confusing with its earlier name. And Safan is coming from the Vinnaic word Safan for north. Vinnaic itself comes from the Vinnaic people who originated around here, a good fishing spot, and they got their name from the Grayan word, they lived around here, winos, referring to the wine that they often traded back and forth across the Cannae Sea. Just south of this, there's a very large continent known as Dara, which is possibly from the Vinnaic word Daram for south, but also could be named, and more likely named, from the Dara River from the Ukrit word Dara for river. Ukrit was one of 5 major ancient languages derived from my central root language of Proto-Dara Safan, which is basically like the root languages, the root language, one root language for a lot of major language groups in the continents of Dara in the south and Safan. And that originated around here between these two lakes. There is also another language group that originated on this continent and a bit here in this around the Cannae Sea region. Although many of those languages are now extinct. Now onto my minor landmasses on Safan. We have the Cairene Peninsula. This name is derived from the Old Grayan Kar for rock or fortress with the suffix ia, land of, and this is land of the fortress. This region is characterized by lots and lots of rocks, so it's very mountainous, very fortressy, and that's how it got its name. We also have Vetlund, which is a very wet land. That's the entirety of its name. It's just a very wet land. It's sort of very flat. It's just like not very mountainous, and it has a lot of wetness to it. I am dragging this out way longer than it should. Anyways, the island of Fellin. Fellin comes from the old Fellin Fjall, mountain, and in, meaning the place of or the ones of. Fellin used to just be the name of the people who settled here, and then a kingdom of the people who settled here. But then that kingdom became known for the island, and the island became known for the kingdom. So the island got called Fellin, and now the island is Fellin, which is sort of like calling an island the people of the place of mountain. And now for the major bodies of water. Actually, I can move on to this labeled map, which is a lot easier to see. Yeah, this is much better. Anyways, onto the major bodies of water. Just north of Safan, we have the Duvonic Ocean, which is coming from the Old Lateraic for vast sea, Duvonum, from the Proto-Safan Deu. This is sort of like a mix between the North Atlantic and Arctic Ocean on Earth. And then next we have the Velarian Sea, referring to this central sea here, connecting this unnamed continent and Safan. And this was a major trading hub for, like, a major trading sea between many of the peoples who settled here. And it's sort of a conglomeration of the word vela for sails and nora for within. And now this sea, the Aretian Sea, you may have heard it mentioned in one of my earlier videos about the coalition war between the Burkhantan Sultanate and the uh I can't I can't remember the name of it right now, but this is the Aretian Sea. It was named after a Kondat explorer known as Aretius, who was the first to completely map this sea. I don't know what it was called before he was alive, but it's called the Aretian Sea now. Anyways, this is the Cannae Sea, which I was referring to earlier, which is named for the red tinted reed beds that grow along its shores around here, and then the name Cannae Sea just spread across this entire region, and now this is all called Cannae Sea. And now we have the Marnovic Sea over here, which is sort of like a bay, boxed in by Feline, Ventland, and just the main body of the continent of Safan. And this is from the old Feline Mar and Vic, as in sea bay, because it's a mix of a sea and a very large sort of bay, I guess. For the lakes, we've got the Ozerova Lake from the Proto-Volcanic Ozero for lake. And we've got the Azeril Sea from Tamaric. The Tamaric Az for water source, and Ir to make or do, or over time got changed to great or powerful. So this is essentially great water source, or to make water source, I suppose. Anyways, let's actually talk a bit about the ancient cultures and languages. I just realized I skipped. Did I? Why are the mountains after the ancient? Whatever. Let's talk a bit about the ancient cultures and languages of this continent. We've got, of course, Proto-Darosafan, the common ancestor language between many of the language branches in the continents of Dara, northern Dara, and Safan. And we've got Ukrit, one of the 5 major ancient language branches descended from Proto-Darosafan, settled around the Dara River, which is about right here-ish. And next we've got Vinaic. I've already explained this. It's from the Grayan word Vanos, referring to the wine that was traded along here. And they settled around here. Next, we've got Grayan from here. It's from the old Grayan word Graioiai, a poetic term for ancient or noble. And this got adopted by themselves, and specifically referring to actually people from more up here. But it was used for mostly all of the people of this entire minor landmass, which I somehow forgot to name. Next, we've got Lateraic, which developed in these sort of plain regions enveloped by these big mountains. And this is derived from the Lateran Valley, specifically this region, which is from latera, meaning broad plain, because it's sort of a broad plain contrasted by these mountains, which makes it seem like a broader and more plainier than other broad plains. Anyways, we've got Velcanic from Velka, meaning great or grand people, and they settled around this region. And finally, we've got Sarcinian from the Proto-Sarcinian Sarsoi for boundarymen or edge dwellers. This actually, again, was not a term used to refer to themselves, but a term used by people around here to refer to them, which then got adopted by the Kondot as they moved up towards the Thoven River Valley. Next, we've got Nameruic and Tamaric, which again is this language. I don't think I've actually said this before. It's the name for the language branch that evolved around here, separate from Proto-Darusafan. It's from the Namuric people, sort of trading group of people that love to trade on the Kanay Sea and Valarian Sea. Next, we've got our mountains, which really should have been put earlier, or maybe I should have put the ancient cultures and languages further up. Anyways, the mountains, we've got the Piran Mountains, from the Old Graian Pir for fire and Ana up high. These mountains are actually very volcanic in nature due to the high tectonic activity around here, which is why it's called Fire Up High. And there's actually an old legend or myth surrounding this name in Old Graian culture that a god that I somehow also forgot to name, or like sort of a deity right below a god, was fleeing from the wrath of another god over here, and these mountains rose up to protect her from the wrath of whatever other god it was. And now she is encased forever asleep within the Piran Mountains. I somehow forgot to name two major deities. I'm sorry about that. Next, we've got the Ob Mountains. This is descended from the Lateraic word albus for white, which is descended from the Graian word alfinos for flower. Next, we've got the Salkaran Mountains, just south of that, which are descended from the Lateraic words sel for stone and karan for rugged and sharp. These are sort of like the little brother of the Ob Mountains up here. Next, we've got some rivers and bodies of water. I haven't named this river yet. You can name this river if you want in the comments. We've got the Eisen River, named after the old Eisenic word eisern for iron, which is due to the iron-rich soil and iron deposits found along the river and near the river, also in these mountains here. And then we have the Thoven River here. This river is from the Proto-Darusafan To. I don't know how to pronounce this, which is to swell or be powerful, which descended into the Lateraic Tomeo. This is drawn from the Thoven River's periodic flooding from periodically rain from this region will blow across the Marnovic Sea Bay, and sort of land in this region, causing a lot of moisture content, a lot of rain in this sort of area, causing the Thoven River to flood. And finally, the Grun River, named after its green color. That's actually all the names I've come up with for now, but I have a very nice selection of maps to continue. This is a work in progress map of the world. You can see where I'm gonna put some continents. This is definitely not set in stone, and I will absolutely be completely changing this, but I've already put a lot of hours into this map, so I'm probably only gonna be changing it in about 3 months over the summer when I actually have time to change the map entirely. I am actually currently working on G-plates, trying to get this to work in G-plates, and that's actually why I made this, which is sort of an original supercontinent, which formed several 100 million years ago, and I'm trying to work with G-plates to create some realistic mountains and make this continent map feel more real, because honestly, to me, it feels kind of weird. Anyways, this is a tectonic map, and it has a lot of tectonic activity specifically focused on this region. This is definitely on purpose, not at all because I chose to focus on this region first and then mapped out everything else later. This is a map of currents on this Earth. We have got a summer. For actually all of these maps, pretty much all of these, I have a summer and winter. It's just that I have not finished winter for any of them other than the currents. So anyways, the process of making this map here was actually pretty interesting. So I followed the methodology from Artifexian's world building log, which had you sort of map out an ITCZ, and sort of draw equatorial currents originating from the west to the east along this, which bounce back and go from east to west, which then flow up and to the side and down to create these equatorial gyres. And all of these currents are actually formed because of the rotation of the Earth, which cause, if there weren't any continents there, would cause water to flow in this direction up here, between this zone and the poles, in this direction between these two, the Arctic Circle and the Northern Hemisphere tropic, and then water flowing from east to west between the equator and the tropic, water flowing from east to west between the equator and this tropic, water flowing from west to east in this temperate zone, and east to west down here. And this is the same sort of, it just mimicked this in the winter currents, although the ITCZ is flipped to the south of the equator now. And then I used that to make the summer wind and pressure. So the ITCZ is actually sort of like the merger point near the equator for all of the trade winds from the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. And that's the whole reason why it exists. It's sort of this massive low pressure point. And so this is actually not that realistic of a map. A real map would have like large high pressure zones and low pressure zones mapped out. This is a bit unrealistic, but basically you just have these high pressure points which are mapped along these, so like the transition between this eastward current to the southernward cold current for all the equatorial gyres, and these sort of as a baseline spiral out wind from them, but in reality it's actually a bit more complicated than this. We have winds spiraling out towards the ITCZ, and then over here it sort of just goes from nowhere on this map. It's not very clear where these winds come from. It's because the high pressure points, to my knowledge, are actually more like a band of high pressure with high pressure focused on specific regions, not exactly points, so it might be a little unintuitive here to illustrate them as points. And then over here we've got wind wrapping up around, and again this is actually due to the Coriolis effect, which has a similar flow east to west here, west to east here, east to west here, east to west here, west to east here, east to west here. Yeah, I haven't done the winter part of this. And from the currents and the wind and pressure, I've made the precipitation map, which is basically taking all the base precipitation. We start with where all the warm currents run along the coast, and then if any wind blows towards the coast in the regions where warm current runs around it, we can set precipitation there up to 4,000 kilometers in. But really, it's based more on the fletch of the wind, which is how the distance that the wind's been traveling over the water. For example, if the wind travels from this coast to this coast along the Valarian Sea, the fletch of it is only going to be a maximum of the distance from here to here. So the rain will only go all the way up to, say, here, because it doesn't, it won't go further than the distance it traveled over the water, essentially. And then we have more wet regions along the low pressure points mapped out here, 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 and here. And that's basically it. It doesn't travel over mountains generally. And at the edge of steep mountains, the rain will drop the wind will drop all the moisture into these regions along the mountains when it's forced upwards. I haven't done the map of winter precipitation because it requires the map of winter wind and pressure, which I have not made. And now I moved on to mapping temperature. So this is a map of continentality, which is the variance in temperature between summer and winter. We've got oceanic here, which is the region of the oceanic region sort of just doesn't vary in temperature that much, about like 10 degrees Celsius between summer and winter. And then we've got suboceanic, subcontinental, and then continental, and supercontinental, which varies wildly between summer and winter. And since my continents actually are very small and don't take up a lot of the surface area of my planet, about 17% compared to Earth's 25%, I actually don't have any continental or supercontinental zones. With this map, I can create the map of summer isotherms, and this is very wild and crazy looking, but essentially I just started out with base bands around the Earth, and then I traced cold regions along cold currents flowing along the coast, and warm regions along warm currents flowing along the coast. And that's basically the entire map, actually. We do have these equatorial tropical warm water regions here from these currents flowing back over here and building up warm water around here. And then, since this is obviously a little bit unclear, I also made this temperature map in Krita, which is colored to sort of make it easier to visualize. These maps are definitely not accurate, but they are at least very helpful in understanding my world a bit better, and for me to understand my world a bit better, so I know where to put stuff. Like, for example, here for wind and pressure, we have these blue regions of uplifting from Ekman suction. Essentially, what Ekman suction and pumping is that water flows perpendicularly to the direction of wind. So water is going to flow 90 degrees clockwise in the northern hemisphere and 90 degrees counterclockwise of the wind in the summer hemisphere. So what Ekman pumping is when water flows towards the coast, gets forced down by the coast, and pulls water from the surface down. And Ekman suction, which is what's demonstrated here, is when water is pulled away from the coast, causing water from underneath to get pushed up. And what Ekman suction is good for determining is good fishing spots. So I've just labeled coastal areas where Ekman suction sort of is going to happen. So this is where some coastal civilizations might start. Anyways, that's pretty much it for the video, but if you want to check out these maps for yourself, I have the links to this collection of maps here in the description, to a copy of them, a copy of the political maps of Safan that I've made so far, and also a copy of all my scripts from my previous videos, and a copy of these names that are going to be updated every few weeks to catch you up on what I've made new. I don't know if there's any more I can say. Oh yes, I have a second channel called Nut, where I might be posting behind the scenes stuff, like how I make my videos, so you can go over there if you want. And I think that's going to be the end of this video.